good at being a ghost if you can't frighten people away?
My brother didn't kill anybody.
Please don't kill me. I'll do anything you want. I'll make love to you. Would you like that? I'll give you a blowjob.
I want to set things straight right off. And don't think I'm weird or anything. It's just that sometimes I play up this nice girl image. People like to see the cute little blind girl acting a certain way. Maybe sometimes I play up the sympathy for all it's worth. But I hate it. I don't want to have to pretend.
You're exactly as silly as me, Miss. You never get anything right, do you?
I try. I don't know what's wrong with me.
You're completely and absolutely fucking abnormal. That's what's wrong with you.
Jackson, I wish you wouldn't do that.
I'm sorry. I hope I didn't scare you. I brought you some chocolates.
Really?
I'm so stupid, I almost bought flowers for you again.
Oh, no, don't be silly. I love flowers. I don't get them very often. Anyway, chocolates are much nicer.
These are the ones with little cherries in brandy.
Ooh, lovely.
You could kill someone with this thing. I think it just makes me feel more inadequate. There's a whole drawer full of the stuff.
I have to occupy my spare time somehow.
Yes, but couldn't you take up knitting or painting or something?
Hey, this is Russ Manzat, the writer of Rush Week, and you're listening to The Hysteria Continues.
And indeed you are. Welcome back to The Hysteria Continues. This is episode 170, and this time we are heading over to jolly old Britain for Unmasked Part 25, the slasher spoof from 1989, with lots of alternate titles, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit later. And I believe, Joseph, this is kind of your pick, but it's actually a listener pick, isn't it? Who delighted us with this pick?
Oh, this is a Michael Alishan pick.
Right. Well, thank you.
One of the very last Alishan picks.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing? And there is a reason why this has been left to last, I wonder. But how are you doing anyway, Joseph?
Well, I've a lack of sleep, but other than that, I'm all right.
Good. Okay. Well, you can always catch up some sleep. Rewatch this film, perhaps. Erik, how are you doing?
That's my performance art version of how I'm feeling.
Okay.
You can see the extended version late night on Channel 4 or BBC 2.
Is that a good thing? Is that a good sound? Is that your... are you making an orgasm face?
No. Yeah. I'll have my thoughts on Unmasked later.
Okay.
Maybe
right.
Maybe not.
Okay. It's all very enigmatic today and mysterious. Are you feeling enigmatic and mysterious, Nathan?
Yes, and I like that word, enigmatic. It's very, I don't know, existential.
Salubrious.
It is very existential. Yeah.
Yes, I feel existential. I feel a lot of existentialism already.
Okay.
I'm getting the impression that Unmasked Part 25 has driven us all a little mad.
We all go a little mad sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, before we get on to the delights of Unmasked Part 25, let's have a little chat about what we've been watching recently. So, Erik, do you want to go first? What have you been watching?
Well, the only thing I watched of note this week was I rewatched City of the Living Dead, which is Lucio Fulci's 1980 movie made slap bang in the middle of his, zombie era, I suppose you could call it. I love the movie. It's bonkers. It doesn't really have a coherent plot, and that's what I love about it. The Beyond would still be my favorite of his Purple Patch, if that doesn't sound too rude. But City of the Living Dead is certainly up there. And it's delight to see the uncut version, because I grew up with the. I mean, do you remember the label Elephant Video back in the 80s, Justin, where they were re-releasing Fulci's back catalogue, but with sort of ridiculous amounts of cuts, maybe 10, 15 minutes missing from them. So City of the Living Dead played with no gore, back in the day, and it made it even less plotless and less coherent. It made it even more plotless, I should say, and less coherent. So yeah, it's a delight to see it all in Blu-ray glory with, John Morgan getting his head drilled, and that poor girl, I can't think of her name, who has to vomit up her intestines. It's a very disgusting film because there's lots of worms and horribleness in it, but I love it.
I saw it when I was a little kid. And the scene where the girl throws up her own guts, like, it makes me feel kind of queasy, not because of the grossness of it, but I almost feel her pain. I feel like I'm losing my own guts as I watch it, and I'm thinking, how empty would her body feel while she's throwing up all this stuff? I mean, like, I think you would feel very hollow.
You would.
Inside.
What would you think? What would you think her family would feel about what she's going through?
That's exactly. I was going to say. What I can't help thinking is, she's got family. What are they going to find her?
I feel that her family would be very upset, because I think that would be very painful. Did you know that over here that movie was released as The Gates of Hell?
I did.
Yeah, and did you know that there's a scene in it where a woman played by the wonderful Catriona MacColl is buried alive, and to get her out, the guy just starts slamming a pickaxe into the coffin?
Yep, right in front of her face.
And I'd be like, you couldn't just pry the coffin open?
Yeah, there's more practical ways to open this coffin.
Yeah, you didn't have to slam this pickaxe right next to my face.
Did I tell you?
It's one of those movies. It's one of those movies I'd always see at the video store under the Gates of Hell title, and I was like, this has to be really scary. And when I rented it, I just remember laughing for the most part.
God, it scared me, but I was very young.
Yeah.
I still find it kind of creepy in a way, and so, but it is silly, obviously, but parts of it are eerie. I like Fulci zombies because they look like they properly have been decaying underground for months or years, whatever, as opposed to something like 28 Days Later or one of those movies.
If I recall correctly, I think the Gates of Hell version over here is like cut, tremendously. I could be wrong, but it's been a while.
Probably not as badly cut as it was over here back in the day.
Probably not.
Was it a video nasty?
I don't think it was an official video nasty, was it, Justin?
I'm not sure. I think it was. I thought it was.
Beyond and Zombie Flesh Eaters were definitely on the list.
I thought City of the Living Dead was. But did I tell you I've had lunch with Catriona MacColl?
You did, and what was she like?
She's very nice. She's very, very friendly. It wasn't a one-to-one. It wasn't a date, put it that way. But we were at a buffet, and I sat next to her, and she was lovely.
Were you chatting to her about these movies, or?
Well, it was kind of a horror convention type thing. So I think she was a bit fed up talking about. We did talk a bit about them, but I think she wanted to talk more about lunch and various other things. Because I think she spent our last 2 days talking about Fulci films. But
she did a commentary on the Beyond DVD with David Warbeck. It's one of the funniest commentaries that I've ever heard. So I would recommend anybody check that out.
Apparently that was done. David Warbeck was in his final few months.
Yeah, sadly. But he was on some, I think he was on some fairly heavy medication. So, I mean, he was unfiltered, completely unfiltered for this commentary.
Did she sound surprised? I have to hunt this one out, actually. Did she?
Did she sound surprised at all? Yeah, there were a couple of times that she actually told him to stop it. But in more of a playful way, but kind of a okay, how far are we going with this? Hey, Stripes.
Hey, Stripes.
So, okay, well, that's good. So, and of course, I know you've always, ever since, been on the hunt for uncut ones, Erik.
Yes, always.
Always, good. Is there anything else you've seen?
No, I watched a few other things, but I don't want to talk about them now because it may be something we are going to be discussing at a later date.
Okay, right. Okay, well, thank you, Erik. Nathan, how about you?
Well, I watched two things. The first is I watched Last Shift, which came out a few years ago. It's about the rookie cop that's alone at the precinct that's being shut down, and all this weird stuff starts going on there. I actually thought it was a fairly creepy movie, and it's got some really good scenes in it. It's one of those movies that thank you, Boomer. It's one of those movies that, as much as I liked it and thought it was really good, I think my main issue with it is I kept feeling like it could have been scarier, could have been even creepier. So I'd probably venture to give it maybe a 6.5 on a scale of 1 to 10. Definitely worth seeking out, but it's not quite as scary as I think it could have been. Still good, though.
Yeah, I like that one. I thought it had, phenomenal sound design, but I thought the female cop, I thought she was just incredibly dumb in a lot of situations. The one who's watching
I kind of can agree with that. I mean, the plot pretty much has her do some, fairly dumb things. Unfortunately, I guess, to further the plot along, because in reality, cop or not, once this started going down, I probably would have just left. I've been like, it's an old abandoned precinct. I don't care enough to hang out while this crazy cult or whatever is stalking me around here.
I think I've seen that ages ago, and I think the only thing I enjoyed it. I think it got a bit sort of silly towards the end, but also the whole thing about the cult in it was kind of like clearly meant to be like a Charles Manson style cult, but it was completely the wrong era, wasn't it? They sort of said they'd been killed like 10 years or something before, or so that sort of just seems a bit weird to me.
Yeah, I could see that. Excellent. But overall though, I liked it well enough. So it's definitely worth looking for. I would say it's on Netflix.
Cool. Okay, right. Thank you, Nathan. Anything else?
Yes, and this is going to be a Patreon pick for me eventually, but I watched Evil Toons, and it was amazing. I mean, it's just a cartoon that's killing these girls running around this big mansion and just their nightgowns. And it's just, it's a very... I don't think suspenseful is the right word. Hilarious, right. I'd say. Yeah. It made me laugh a lot.
I can imagine really it's right up your alley. I would imagine that's a perfect Patreon pick. So it's not a slasher movie then?
No, because I say not a slasher because it's a cartoon that's killing, and he's killing them by like biting them and, clawing them up and stuff. So, it's not necessarily a slasher type killer. Although... for most of the movie, he possesses somebody and they do the killing, but there's a few scenes with the cartoon, he does make a woman's top bust open.
Ooh, Fred Olen Ray. I just looked at have we heard any of his movies?
Didn't we do Scalps?
I don't think we've covered Scalps. I think you did a commentary on it, didn't you?
I did. Oh, maybe that's what I'm thinking of. And I think I used some. I thought we did. I have to look back. We've done so many. This is episode 170. I think we may have used some of the dialogue from it on one of our top threes a while back.
Oh, yeah. I love Scalps.
And we have some news about top threes, so stay tuned.
Yes. Oh, yes. Very true. But that's all that I've seen, Justin. So it's been a good week.
Okay. Well, fantastic. Well, Joseph, what about you?
Yes, I have actually watched something new this week. I watched a movie called Extinction on Netflix. It stars Michael Pena and Lizzie Kaplan. Michael Pena is this guy who keeps having bad dreams about this alien invasion, and no one believes him. They think he's just, got some mental problems until they find themselves smack dab in the middle of an alien invasion. It's pretty good, actually. I like that it's kind of set in this, kind of isolated areas, like inside of an apartment building, and they're trying to escape. They're trying to get like 10 blocks down the road into like this bunker. So there's like all these confined spaces, and the alien design is very unusual. It's really all I can say about it without trying to spoil it too much. It's quickly paced. It's not a very long movie. It's all set on Earth, so it's not too sci-fi-ish. A lot of good, just kind of suspense moments. I think what, kind of lifts it above just being kind of, average is a fairly shocking and effective plot turn about 50 minutes into the film. It caught me by surprise, and typically I can see some of these things coming, but I was like, well, I did not see that coming. So, a good 1 or 2 time watch. I had a lot of fun with it. Anyone else seen it?
Not yet. I do want to see it, though.
Yeah.
It's a popular Netflix over here. So.
Yeah, I tried to watch it last night on Netflix, but our internet wasn't really cooperating, so I didn't get around to it. Because I thought you might be talking about it today, so I did try and watch it. But I will definitely on the next.
That is so weird, Justin. The second you said I tried to watch it last night, but my internet connection wasn't working, I got a Skype notification that says poor network connection.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it all sounds.
Podcast is existential.
Oh my God, Nathan! Just as you said that, I got a Skype notification saying Skype is existential.
Wow.
So spooky.
I will say this movie, I probably will watch it because you said that there's not really a space or spaceship setting. So I don't mind futuristic movies as long as they're set on Earth. Yeah, it draws a few parallels between this alien invasion and they kind of it's really hard to explain without spoiling it, but they kind of do a few political parallels, like these people are people too. We should treat them with respect. Blah 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 blah. So it's kind of interesting in that note. But I think you'll enjoy it. I think the direction it goes might surprise you. Okay.
Cool. Okay. Well, sure. Look out for that one. Anything else?
No, I think that's it for this week.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Well, a couple of things I've watched recently. I finally got a chance to see Ghost Stories, the new British anthology, which was a play in the West End, I believe, which I always fancied to go and see, but I never got a chance to. In fact, there's quite a sort of a history of kind of scary plays and things like in the West End in London. The Woman in Black, Susan Hill's book was turned into a play, which I think is one of the longest running plays in London ever, and obviously it was turned into a much superior TV adaptation in the late 80s, which is well worth hunting down before it was turned into the Daniel Radcliffe vehicle a few years back, and a ho-hum sequel. But Ghost Stories is a kind of a nod back to, I kind of guess, the Amicus anthologies from the early 70s, like Tales from the Crypt, those kind of movies. So it follows a professor who's kind of debunking supernatural tales. Andy Nyman, who is the guy, one of the guys who wrote this. I think the other guy, and I can't remember his name, is one of the League of Gentlemen, not the film, but the British TV comedy show. And he goes around trying to debunk 3 supernatural stories, so like hence the anthology, and it has its kind of wraparound tale. I thought it was really good. It's kind of very effective, quite spooky. It's not like the most frightening film in ages as the bus hoardings would have us believe, but it certainly has its moments, and it is also quite funny as well. Erik, have you caught that one yet?
Not yet, no. I did see that the trailer was playing quite a lot when I had a little run of going to the cinema maybe 6 months ago. I kept seeing that trailer. So I do want to see it. Martin Freeman's in it, yeah.
Martin Freeman's in it, yeah. And there's there's quite a few. I think it's Paul Whitehouse. Sorry,
is Reece Shearsmith in it as well?
Not recognisably anyway. I don't know if he was. I mean, there's a few kind of. Well, you have to see it anyway. I think it's gonna. If you enjoy the kind of Amicus movies, then it would be right up your alley. But it's really well done and quite funny as well. But not funny. It's bits of it are funny, but also bits of it are really scary, or it could be really scary depending on how you deal with these kind of things. But it's definitely a recommendation. Good production values, and it would be great to see some more of those kind of movies coming out. So I take it, Joseph, Nathan, you've not seen that one yet.
No,
I saw the one of my Facebook friends had the poster up, and I thought the poster looked interesting, but no, I haven't seen it.
Okay, well, definitely one to look out for. The other one is a completely different proposition, and it's a film that I remember. I think I remember because I remember the very last, well, not the very last shot, but the very last minute of this movie, and I think it was from when I watched the BBC horror double bill back in the early 80s. On UK TV, and this was 1977's The Car, which I hadn't seen, I don't think, since then. And it's kind of essentially now watching it, it's obviously like a Jaws rip-off with this kind of this devilish black car, which may or may not have a supernatural presence driving. Goes around basically bumping off people left, right and centre, knocking cyclists off bridges and running over French horn players and all sorts of things. And it's got a very rather hunky Josh Brolin as the county sheriff who's kind of chasing this black car around the desert.
Don't you mean James Brolin? I think Josh Brolin was probably just 2 years old.
Yes, James.
Oh, James Brolin. Oh, right. Okay, sorry. I was getting sorry. James Brolin then. He was in the Amityville Horror as well, wasn't he, a couple of years later?
Yeah, this is weird because I agree he's quite hunky, but it's very unusual for you and I to agree.
Yeah, that is. Well, that's where we meet in the middle.
Spit roast.
As it were. Yeah, spit roast. Oh, Erik, how could you?
I can't believe I said that on a Sunday.
On Sunday. Baby Jesus, what would he think? But I thought it was kind of it was really entertaining. I mean, I hadn't seen it for a long time, and it had a brilliant kind of a Blu-ray release. It looks amazing, and it plays it relatively straight, considering it is essentially Jaws on land with the devil driving a big black car. Spoiler alert! But I won't give away the final shot. But if you've seen it, you'll know what I mean. So is that a film that you've all seen? I take it probably is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Love it. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember enjoying it a lot too.
I don't remember anything about it, but I watched it when I worked at the video store. We should tell you how long ago it was, because it's when I worked at a video store and we had VHS tapes.
What tapes?
VHS. Y'all had PAL because you thought that all those tapes were your pals. No. But we had VHS.
Oh, we had VHS as well. You had VHS NTSC and we had VHS PAL. Yeah.
It's not NTSC. It's
Oh wow!
Left off the C.
That's where the music came from. Dance music.
But NTSC was inferior to PAL, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
Higher frame rate. Yeah.
Yeah, and also there were more lines, weren't there, on PAL?
Oh, you think you're better then? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, better than you Yanks.
How dare you? Although not really Yanks, because Yankees are the northern states.
Not to people outside of the United States.
No.
Oh, see, you think everybody in the States are Yanks?
Yeah.
Well,
maybe the Yank was right. Maybe there is something out there.
So, before we get into a fisticuffs over terminology and video standards, although I do remember, I think, because I remember we used to get VCRs that would play American tapes, NTSC tapes, as well as British ones. And I've said this before, but I remember, obviously I won't repeat my pawn shop, Christopher Street, Jess Franco Hall of Oasis Zombies, but that was on LP. I think do you remember they used to have, or EP or something? It was one that the one that felt like the videotape was light as a feather. EP. And so I think there were about 4 inches of videotape in each videotape, and it was, the quality was really, really shit. And I also had Christmas Evil.
Probably prefers at least 6 or 7 inch.
Well, ideally a little bit more. Yeah.
Well, I have a fun fact. When I finally tracked down Crazy Fat Ethel 2, it was on the Good Times label and it was on EP. and like the quality was just really bad on EP because it rewound faster, so I liked that part of it.
Talk about the
that
most name for a video company releasing Crazy Fat Ethel 2. Good
times. See how that was?
Was that tape Dynamite, just Nathan?
Yes, and I know what you were doing. I didn't realize it for a second, but you're doing the show Good Times with Florida.
Why is her name Florida?
It's the name of a state.
Yep.
It's not the rapper Flo Rida.
No, do you know that it took me forever to realize that Flo Rida also could mean Florida?
Well, that's Nathan. Wait till you hear this one. There's a drag artist in the UK called Tina C, who does a country and western act. Like, I just never twigged that it was a pun on Tennessee.
Oh, I didn't get it till you told me that.
I didn't get that either.
Tennessee.
So now you told it. I've seen Tina C a few times.
Okay.
And she speaks like this, y'all. She could be in one of your films with Hazel Tankersley.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man, that would be awesome.
Although the real guy is from Brighton, I believe, so he doesn't speak like that in reality. So.
No.
Brighton. Is that in the States or is that UK?
South of London, yes.
That's where I lived for 10 years. It's when I started the podcast. Did I start the podcast? No, I hadn't started the podcast when I was in Brighton.
Start the website.
The website, yes. Which, by the time you hear this, Hysteria Lives will be 20 years old.
Oh,
I know.
Wow.
How many years old is Hysteria Continues?
7.5.
7.5.
7.5.
It'll be
We're
8.
so young.
8 in January. And dog years were like, what, 49.5 or something? I don't know.
Yes. Well, long may she continue, perhaps.
Well, as Justin would say, this is a very scintillating conversation.
Well, why don't we Say it again?
I said in
Erik.
that exact voice.
Well, let's get on to the feature presentation, shall we? So I believe you couldn't track down a trailer for this, Joseph, if I'm remembering correctly. So this is a piece of dialogue from Unmasked Part 25. So you'll bring us in after this, won't you?
Yes.
Okay, here we go.
You know, Shelley, before I met you, I was terribly lonely. I had no one. Everything's different now. I don't know what it is, but I feel certain that one day life's going to be just perfect for us. If only I could be rid of that stupid mask.
It's funny, since I've been blind, I've always had to wear these sunglasses. Anyway, I'm sure no one cared, really. They probably thought us a cute couple when we were in the market last week. They probably thought it was some crazy new fashion. Maybe we'll start a whole new trend.
Behind this mask is the disfigured face of a hideous human monster. The son of a psychotic serial killer, Jackson carries on the family tradition, brutally murdering everyone who crosses his path. Slaughter is his only passion until he meets Shelley, a beautiful blind woman. Her undaunted love for Jackson forces him to reconsider his rampage of senseless killing. Unmasked Part 25 is a tongue-in-cheek axe-and-skull howl for comedy and horror fans. Jackson will have you shrieking with fear and laughter. Unmasked Part 25 opens in a predictable but extremely gory fashion before settling into this kind of weird rhythm. I liken it to Jason Voorhees' kind of growing malaise with his day job, sort of. And some of those scenes where Jackson laments that his daily routine has kind of lost its appeal, they're quite humorous and ahead of their time. I also didn't mind the kind of serio-comical drama aspect of Jackson finding true love and escaping, sort of the murderous shackles that bind his life. But like the similar Behind the Mask, which we covered a little while back, this is another one of those movies that sort of pokes fun at the slasher movie tropes before anyone else had done it, or unlike anyone else had done it, I should say. And, while that's while also being, while it also does, why it also revels in those sort of things as well. But like that film, the two different tones, they don't necessarily mesh well with one another. I mean, I'm probably repeating everything I said when we covered Behind the Mask, but again, this is sort of like two movies fused into one not quite successful film. It's uneven, despite some of the charm and the cleverness it does possess. I love the scene where Jackson sort of kind of reaches that cathartic stage and tells this victim that it doesn't really matter if she runs. He kind of has to kill, and then she'll probably inevitably do something stupid like trip over a branch or something just so he can catch up to her. I thought that was kind of cute, kind of clever. I also like I actually kind of like the love story aspect with this blind girl, and I like that she has this affinity for sex toys, and she's got this whole drawer and a closet just full of some very scary looking dildos, for lack of a better word. In the version I saw, the gore is pretty plentiful too. I mean, the first the kind of opening montage with the different kills, I had to rewind it a couple times because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. So I thought those were very well done. But again, I mean, you drop all these elements into a blender, and it doesn't necessarily blend as well as it should. I mean, it's like 2 or 3 different movies that would probably be better as short films. So I would say I'm on the fence. I can't recommend it, but I don't want to, pass it off, as something you shouldn't watch. So I don't really know. It's just there. Like the last film we covered, it's just there. What do you think, Justin?
Well, this is a film that I had on video many years ago, and I remember, I think I saw it being advertised in the back pages of Fangoria or Gore Zone or one of those magazines in the late 1980s or early 1990s, and it had the video cover, and it showed almost like a mummy with the face wrapped in bandages with like teeth and these kind of like coal-like eyes looking out and sort of this sort of grinning face, and I'd seen, I think it was in Gore Zone, the magazine Gore Zone, which was like a Fangoria spin-off in the early 90s. And I remember seeing some photos of the gore effects in this and thinking, wow, this looks really, really nasty. It looks really gory. And when I saw the UK video, I shouldn't have really been surprised, considering that by that point, when films were coming out in the early 90s or late 80s, early 90s on video, that all the gore was cut out. And so it was completely gore-free. Although I did look it up on the BBFC and it said all versions of this film have been passed uncut, which is patently not true. So unless, of course, the distributors may have pre-cut all the gore out, which is certainly a possibility. I can't really remember. I think I wasn't that impressed with it at the time because I've long lamented the fact that the UK didn't really do slasher movies. Certainly in the golden age. I mean, you had Pete Walker, who made fantastic proto slashers like House of not House of Whipcord, because that wasn't really slasher, but certainly Frightmare and the Confession Murders and all those kind of films are kind of especially Frightmare are fantastic, like proto slashers. And of course Tower of Evil, and you had all of those movies in the 70s that were kind of like helped pave the way for the American slasher of like the late 70s and early 1980s. But during that time, curiously, there was very little going on in the UK, and the only other film that sprung to mind, apart from films say like Rawhead Rex, which we've covered, was a film like Good Night, God Bless, which was about the killer priest, which was pretty god-awful as well. So with this, I think when I saw it, I was probably still on the hunt for the next Friday the 13th and My Bloody Valentine, and I don't remember being particularly impressed, although, to be honest, I'm not even sure if I finished it back then because I was probably so underwhelmed by the lack of gore. So this was a kind of, in all essences, a kind of, all intents and purposes, a kind of first-time watch for me. I appreciated it. I think I'm with you, Joseph. I mean, I've looked online, and there seems to be a lot of love for this movie. A lot of people really, really like it, and I'm slightly bewildered by the kind of the massive appreciation for this film. I appreciate what it's doing. but I think it does feel a bit disjointed. Essentially, it's two brief slasher movies bookend a central section of a bizarre kind of love story, essentially. I like the fact that Jackson is, in essence, basically is Jason Voorhees. He even sort of says that he was taken to America as a kid, and they thought he drowned in the lake, and he'd been spending the last 10 years killing camp counselors. So I wonder how Paramount's what they thought of this movie. I mean, they called him Jackson, but for all intents and purposes, he's meant to be Jason Voorhees, and he has a hockey mask, which isn't like the hockey mask you see in most Friday the 13th movies, although curiously is kind of the same hockey mask that you see on some video posters, Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning, that kind of slightly more angular hockey mask. There are bits in it I thought it's quite witty. There's bits in it that's quite funny. But I think if you were looking at a slasher spoof, you might be a bit disappointed. So this film may play better on a rewatch when you know exactly what you're getting. But yeah, I was surprised by the gore, considering it's such a low budget as well. Some of the gore effects are very effective. Some of them it's hokey. I mean, it's kind of it's Friday the 13th gore done on a budget but taken to the next level, if that kind of makes sense. So you've got faces being ripped off, you've got you've got all sorts of things happening in this. You've got hatchets to the face, people being axed in the stomach, stabbed, all sorts of different things. So very much a kind of later Friday the 13th style kills, like the kind of things you saw in Part 5 and Part 6, but kind of amped up, and actually, it actually kind of wallows in the gore. So if you're a bit of a gore hound, then, that's certainly pleasing. It also surprising amount of nudity in this as well, which of course I guess was also part of the kind of aping or sort of parodying the Friday the 13th movies, and a surprising amount of male nudity as well. Certainly the first double kill where a couple get impaled by a spear, in a kind of a version of the famous scene that was more or less almost completely cut out of Part 2, and of course inspired by the other famous double impalement of Mario Bava's Bay of Blood, and of course not talking about all of the other double impalements that the films that Erik's been in, but
slag.
But yeah, it's interesting. It kind of reminded me, the film it kind of reminded me of, and it's an earlier film, is obviously Toxic Avenger, the Troma film, because in that you had Toxie falling in love with a blind girl. So, and that was made before this, I believe. When was Toxic Avenger? Was that mid-80s?
84, that's right. 85, yeah.
So you had that going on with this as well. It's fun. It's silly. It's quite witty. I thought it was funny that on the credits on IMDb, William Shakespeare is listed as one of the co-writers of the film, which is kind of strange. But I think it's just because they sometimes stop and start reciting sonnets, Shakespearean sonnets halfway through. It's okay. It's not a film that to be honest, I'm going to come back and watch, be in a rush to watch again anytime soon. But if you are a slasher completist, then, it's definitely worth spending 90 minutes with.
Okay. Nathan.
I really liked Unmasked Part 25. I like the idea that there seems to be two mini slashers in one. Because, in the opening, he goes to this party, and there's, he kills off like 6 people at the party, and it's all done very, very quick, very fast paced. And then, like, towards the end of the movie, it's another party, and he's killing off all these people one by one there as well. And I really liked that aspect of it. And I especially liked at the end when he's killing off people at that party. Like Joseph said, that has the scene where he tells the girl, there's no use running because you're just going to trip and I'll catch up with you. But it's just funny to me that he just, by the end, he's just so bored with killing. It's like his job, like he has to do it, but he's just so bored of it. And I felt that kind of funny. I can see what you guys are saying. It definitely is an uneven film because, you have like moments that are definitely like a parody, but this movie's not like something like Student Bodies or Wacko. It's not like that kind of parody. It's definitely, like you have said, more along the lines of Behind the Mask. And I thought the sex scene was really funny, especially Jackson's reaction to having to use this whip on his girlfriend and not understanding why she enjoys this. I thought it was, especially when he's reading from the book, like, "You're a bad girl. You must be punished." And then he barely hits the bed with that little whip or whatever. I just thought it was so awkward and funny. That's a scene that could be in like a, just a like a comedy film, not necessarily a spoof. So I feel like the movie is, kind of all over the place, especially, the scenes where Jackson seems to be tormented by what he's doing. And of course, there's the ending, which, is kind of a comically downbeat ending. I guess it's a very odd, there's the scene right before the final shot where it's definitely a downbeat moment, and then the final shot's more comical. So I don't know. It's just another example, I guess, of the movie being kind of uneven. But the gore is just fantastic. I mean, the guy getting his face completely ripped open. I had to rewind that because it kind of took me a minute to be like, I was thinking, did he really just use his hands and like rip somebody's face open? So I rewound. I'm still on VHS mode. Went back and watched that scene again, and yes, that is what happened. And he ripped his heart out, which is pretty insane. But yeah, the gore is just fantastic. I mean, I think it's great. It's interesting that the killer, Jackson, is actually a fairly sympathetic person in the film, even when he's doing some pretty awful things. But overall, no, I mean, I really, enjoyed it. It's not something I would say that I'll rewatch a lot or anything like that, but I would probably watch it again just because I had fun with it. So there you have it.
Okay, and Erik, what do you think of this wonderful film?
Well, I'd be very much in the same mindset as yourself and Justin. I probably didn't like it as much as Nathan did, but there's nothing new there. I'd seen the same old VHS that Justin had back in the day, and I remember just being completely underwhelmed and finding the film incredibly boring. But rewatching it this week on a better print with all the gore intact, it was much better than I remembered. Still not a classic, though. I appreciate that it's very different to the usual spoof movie, as Nathan was saying. It doesn't go down the road of Wacko or Pandemonium or National Lampoon's Class Reunion. It doesn't go for pratfalls and slapstick or winks to the camera and that. It does it in a more not subtle way, but a more ambitious way, I suppose. And the gore is a real surprise. Because, as Nathan was saying, it's quite well done. There's a machete to the face that rivals the same shot in Friday the 13th, the final chapter, and they had a considerably larger budget, I would imagine. And the thing that struck me most about Unmasked is how kind of stagey a lot of it looks. It almost looks. It kind of has a student film look with sort of a higher budget. By which I mean, if you look at that set that the party scene is set in at the start of the film, it looks like a squat, but it has all this minimalist decoration on the walls, and it felt very much like a stage set to me. And also the fact that it lingers in lots of shots for quite a long time, and there's lots of dialogue in the midsection, so it felt very much like a play at times. And it's that middle section, I think, where I begin to wish things would maybe speed up a bit. It feels like it's treading water for quite a long time. There are bits I like. I mean, I do like that scene where, as Nathan was saying, where Jackson is reading his dirty talk in the bedroom out of a book, and he's delivering it in this very posh English accent in a kind of unenthusiastic and unsexy way. I thought that was very funny. And I like the fact that, well, I like and I don't like the fact that Shelley just never shuts up. When Shelley first meets Jackson, she talks nonstop for about 5 minutes without pausing for breath. And he eventually has to interrupt and say, actually, I can speak. I did overall, I mean, Joseph made the comparison with Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon. I would say I prefer Unmasked Part 25 to that movie. I still can't get into Behind the Mask at all. I think I'm the only person who doesn't really rate it as highly as everyone else. Unmasked Part 25 for me was much better because I suppose it has proper slasher movie sequences at the start and at the end. When it turns into a slasher movie, it feels like a proper slasher movie with gormless. They're not teenagers, are they? They're 20-somethings, wandering around a house, being offed one by one. I do like the way it ends on that kind of meta note where Jackson looks up and sees the billboard announcing the fact that there's going to be another film about him, Hands of Death Part 26, Jackson Returns. And I like the 80s music in it. It reminded me of some of the dance music that was coming out from the UK around the time, things like Mars and S-Express and that type of stuff. So overall, I would say it was much better than I remembered. But as Jackson says...
Did you notice... Sorry, Eric, to interrupt, but did you notice on the credits it said Stereo MCs?
Yes, I saw that before they were famous.
Yeah, they did the song that's over the end credits and the song that opens the film.
I like that song. I think that song's quite catchy. And you use it in the intro there. Jackson says in the latter stages, I'm starting to get a bit bored with the whole thing, and if only there was something more, it all seems so pointless. And that's kind of how I was feeling maybe midway through the film. As you said, it has an odd structure. It starts out with 20 minutes of slasher action, then you get maybe 50 minutes of this weird love story between Jackson and Shelley before it reverts back to being a horror movie again. But I mean, I applaud its ambition, and it does provide something a bit different. And it's very, very British. It's I didn't remember it being so British. It's it just feels very different to what I was expecting. Like if somebody's handed me Unmasked Part 25 sight unseen and said it's a slasher spoof, I would automatically think, okay, wacko, pandemonium, National Lampoon's Class Reunion, student bodies. And this provides something completely different. And it has funny moments in it, but probably not enough. I don't think, as Justin was saying, I don't think this would be one I would go back to. Like if a super special edition 4K restoration came out, I'm not sure how enthusiastic I would be about purchasing it. But yeah, much better than I remembered. I thought this was going to be a bit of a dirge to sit through, but it wasn't.
Right. Well.
So we're all fairly pretty much in agreement, I guess.
Yeah. What about some background for this movie?
I have a little bit. Nathan, what do you have? Do you have anything, Nathan?
No, nothing.
Just had to hear that. I have a couple of things. I figure you guys probably have more than I do, considering you're from Europe and all. But anyway.
well rescued there.
It's all
well
the same internet.
Joseph.
Yeah. It's also known as Hand of Death and Jackson's Back. It saw a release in France at the Avoriaz International Fantasy Film Festival in January of 1989. It got a video release in the UK on April 2nd of 1990, apparently. This is Mark Cutforth's sole writing credit, and similarly, the Anders Palm, the director, this is the first film he directed. He also directed a film called Deadline from 1989 and Murder Blues in 1991, and that's all he ever did. And I was looking up Deadline, and it sounds just like The Bloodstained Butterfly, which is a boring film, that we covered a few episodes back about. It's about an innocent man in jail who may not be so innocent or something like that. But yeah, the plot synopsis, go read that for Deadline from 1989 and you will instantly draw parallels to The Bloodstained Butterfly. Christian Brando, who played Albert, is the son of Marlon Brando.
Now that fact I don't know is true.
No, it's I looked it up in a couple different places. Apparently it's
Because which character is Albert? Is Albert the jokester at the start with all the hat with all the badges on it?
I don't remember who he is.
He's the guy. He's the one who's with the girl when they go in the house at the beginning, I think.
Okay.
The ones you see at the beginning, not the couple that go down into the squat at the beginning. I think I looked at a photo of him, and I'm pretty sure that is that guy.
Okay. I take it back. It's weird that somebody with, well, he doesn't have a high profile himself, but with a high profile father would be in Unmasked Part 25.
Yeah, I guess typically these kind of actors would, use nepotism, but I guess he never did. That's pretty much all I could find on this film. I mean, it's I couldn't even find a trailer for this movie, so that tells you, something. But what about you guys?
Okay, I have a few things. Do you want me to go, Nate, Justin, or do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, no, you go for it.
Okay, well, Gregory Cox, who plays Jackson, he went on to lots of roles, bit parts on UK TV, including a role on one of my favorite kids TV shows from when I was young, Grange Hill. He was the detective investigating Zammo's nefarious activities around his drug addiction, if you remember that era of Grange Hill, Justin.
I do, yeah.
He also appeared on the Crankies electronic comic show, the good old Crankies. And Edward Brayshaw, who plays Jackson's father, was one of the leads on another children's TV show from a bit earlier, Rent-A-Ghost. Christian Brando. Okay, I'm going to go ahead with this factoid, seeing as we've established it is.
Sorry, Eric. Did you say Rent-A-Ghost?
Yep. Apparently,
I love that. I love that title. I have to see this.
Posts out to people so that they could, scare their enemies or something.
I remember it really well. It's a 70s show from like mid to late 70s. Rent-A-Ghost. It was, it was a kids TV show.
Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead with my Christian Brando factoid, seeing as we just established that it is him, because I was looking at another character thinking, that's not Christian Brando. He appears under the pseudonym Gary Brown, and he was, as you said, the son of Marlon Brando, and in 1990 he was found guilty of manslaughter after killing the boyfriend of his half-sister Cheyenne, and he did 5 years in prison and then passed away in 2008 from pneumonia. Adrian Hawke, who's, I don't know what his character name is in the film. I think he gets a screwdriver or something to the head in the film. He went on to be in the Fog remake as Father Malone. He was in Underworld Evolution, X-Men: The Last Stand, Alien vs. Predator Requiem. So he's not a leading man by any means, but he's appearing in lots of high-profile stuff.
I think he was, wasn't he the one? I thought I was trying to work out which one he was, but I think he's the one that who does the full frontal nudity at the beginning.
Oh, is he? Okay.
And see his butt for about 5 minutes.
Yeah. At the end of the film, when Jackson falls to his knees outside the cinema marquee, you can see a poster for the film "Wish You Were Here," which is being advertised as being in the cinema at the time, and that was released in July of 1987. So. But this is an era when films could be playing in cinemas long after their initial release date, so it's hard to pinpoint. But I'm guessing it was filmed sometime in sort of mid to late 87. I could be wrong, though. The other stuff I have here, Justin, is from an interview I found with Mark Cutforth, who's the writer. I don't know if you found that interview as well.
No.
Okay. This was from a website called, I need to give them credit, laserblastfilmsociety.com, who are a film society in the UK, I think, and they showed, they did a public screening of Unmasked Part 25 and had an interview with Mark Cutforth, the producer. So he's Canadian, and the director Anders Palm is Swedish. They met at NYU, which is where the seeds of the film were sown. Anders then moved to London, and they hooked up again and started getting funding for the film. And they thought a slasher spoof tied closely to the Friday the 13th franchise would be a surefire hit. And he says the abundant humor of Evil Dead 2 also influenced their decision to go for sort of a comedic approach. And the character of Jackson, he said, was based around Udo Kier's performance in Andy Warhol's Dracula. He kind of wanted that sad, sympathetic villain as the lead. Some of the effects crew were also working on Hellraiser 2 at the same time, which is probably why the effects are pretty decent for a low-budget movie. Some of the music was performed by a guy called John King, who was a member of the new wave post-punk band Gang of Four. I know the band. I don't really know any of their songs.
Oh, I love Gang of Four.
Okay, well, he was involved.
Yes.
And it was renamed, and he says he thinks the renaming of it to Unmasked Part 25 was to avoid confusion with a Jackie Chan movie, which was also called The Hand of Death, because The Hand of Death was its original title. And it's the title that appears on the print I was watching as well this week.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Okay, that's all I have, Justin.
Okay, right. Well, thank you. Well, covered most of what I have, but just a couple of things I've got. Was Anders Palm, actually, you were right, Joseph, that was his last feature film as director, but he's still active, and he's executive producer or producer of a new film, which sounds quite intriguing, actually, called The Executioners from this year. And synopsis seem to be about a group of young women who go to the woods into a cabin and then get attacked by a group of masked marauders, and then they turn their tables on them and then find that actually they enjoy hunting the would-be killers more, and they've got, so it's basically saying who are the real monsters type thing. So that's actually quite intriguing. Where is it? I did find an interview with the cinematographers, John de Borman, who is a French cinematographer, and he discussed this film a little bit, but not really going to a massive amount. But he said he found it a real struggle to break into films. But he says, just to paraphrase, he says, a friend of mine wrote a little horror movie. He had £20,000, so it gives you an idea of the budget. And he said, let's do this. He got a few actors together and apparently won the gold at a horror movie festival. And he said from that film, we did another film, then another, which I think referring to the two movies you mentioned, Joseph. He said they weren't great films, but they allowed me to do feature films. And then he went on to, I think he was the cinematographer of The Full Monty from 1997, which is obviously a lot better known. What else? I think you've covered pretty much everything else that I could find about this. The only thing I was just mentioned was you talked about Gregory Cox, who obviously played Jackson. He was also in a film which I haven't seen yet, but it's called Carnival: The Wealth of London from last year, 2017. And he also was in Grace and Favour, which was the follow-up to Are You Being Served? In the late 90s or early 2000s. So that's all the background to have for Unmasked Part 25, apart from Unmasked Part 26 never came to fruition, apart from the very ending of the movie.
That's a lot more background than I anticipated.
Yeah.
For this film.
Well, thank you, Nathan, for that.
You're welcome.
So, well,
what did he do?
Sorry?
Well,
I provided all that. I provided every bit of that.
He was our muse. He was our inspiration. But actually, to give Nathan something to do...
Don't press stop. Shut after credit show.
In all honesty, I mean, I feel like the movie kind of tells you what happens. Jackson just continues on his killing sprees, and I think in each movie he gets more and more bored with it, but what can he do? I mean, all he can do is keep chilling and killing.
Icing and slicing.
Yeah, it's the life of a movie serial killer, isn't it? Has anyone else got anything to add? But I think you probably hit the nail on the head. It's kind of...
Yeah, I would say he eventually just dies from boredom.
Yeah.
Erik, you got anything to add?
Does he try and escape his killing existence in London and moves over to Chattanooga, where he joins forces with the evil Nathan Johnson, and they go on a killing spree together, mainly killing Hazel Tankersley over and over again and her shoe rack.
The shoe rack becomes the killer, though, in one of them.
Wow.
It gets possessed.
What, is this a film you shot, or is it what you would like to shoot?
I wish that I would have shot a film where that shoe rack was possessed. If I would have known back then that the shoe rack would have become as popular as it has, then I would have done more with it.
Is it still there?
Yeah.
We should go shoot a 5-minute. We should go shoot a 5-minute film just about the shoe rack. Do like sort of an Unmasked 25 thing where we interview the shoe rack and ask if it's bored with being in these cheap 5-minute home movies. It'd be very existential.
It would. It would. And
She doesn't have it anymore, though. The shoe rack is no more.
That's a shame.
So do you
I asked
mean
her, I was like, do you still have that shoe rack? Because I would feature it in another movie, but alas.
So do you mean it's out there somewhere in some Goodwill somewhere?
Probably.
So a bit like, actually, well, I was going to say about like Amateur for Horror Awakens, whatever. One of those was those, wasn't it? Or the premise for the whole Friday the 13th TV series, wasn't it?
But think about it. There is cinematic history out there somewhere.
Yeah. Like
So
throwing
if
away
you-
props from like Alien or The Exorcist or something.
Yeah.
Well, that's a challenge for you, dear listener. See if you can find the shoe rack and reunite it with Nathan.
Well, Eric sent me a picture of a store in his town that's just called Shoe Rack.
Yeah. Awesome.
Maybe it ended up there.
Yeah.
Very possibly.
I'll have
So-
to look.
Well, before we get on to the much lauded and BAFTA-winning Eric's Joke of the Week, shall we see what people thought about Unmasked Part 25? Joseph, do you have the Facebook feedback there?
Yes. I asked for everyone's thoughts, and James Packman posted a picture of a pile of shit with flies swarming around it, but the flies are hearts. So I'm assuming he thinks it's shit, but he loves it. I guess. I don't know. Chad Hemsley says he's never heard of it. Matthew Caldwell says, absolutely adore this film. I've been requesting it from Vinegar Syndrome incessantly. Zachary Paul Franklin says, this movie blew me away when I watched it several years ago. I just remember being completely astonished by the tone and truly independent spirit of the film. Not sure how well it would hold up upon rewatch, but looking forward to popping in the DVD in anticipation of the upcoming show. Lawrence Adams says it's a lot of fun. Alone in the Dark, a century of stalk and slash says no thoughts at all, but then they replied, and it says, I, Hayden, actually like this. So I'm assuming there's two guys there.
Yes, it's Phil
Yeah,
and Hayden.
I think the other one's Phil.
Okay, yeah. I know Hayden, but I don't really know Phil. Sorry, Phil. Like the groundhog, Phil. David Hall says, I remember this being really odd and very 80s. I'd love to hear more about its production. From Instagram, Lou Toad says, love it. Jerry Horror 138 says, this is a real movie, and I replied, indeed it is. And Tapes by Dawn says, amazing. It's like Toxic Avenger mixed with a slasher flick. Funny and fun. And that's the feedback on Unmasked, Part 25.
And yes, we're on Instagram now, folks.
Yes, Instagram.com/ I don't even remember what the URL is, but you can find us. We're there.
Indeed. Well, shall we?
Hysteria continues. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, probably. Mm-hmm.
Shall we play How to Get in Contact with the Show, and then we'll be back with that BAFTA-winning joke?
I'm excited to hear Eric's
The content
joke.
of this podcast was provided by Justin, Joseph, Eric, and Nathan. If you enjoy our show and are willing to provide a donation, please consider becoming a Patreon subscriber at patreon.com/The Hysteria Continues. Your monetary kindness keeps the show on the air, and in return, you'll have access to exclusive content not released elsewhere. Also, like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter to stay up to date on all of our future shows and Blu-ray commentary releases. For general feedback, our email address is thehysteriacontinues@gmail.com.
Indeed, it is. And also, just before, again, we're just, they always say anticipation makes it better. We teased earlier about top threes, and we have been musing and thinking about how we can get top threes back into the show, because we know people love them. But we feel like we probably exhausted a little bit the top three slasher thing. So what we thought, actually, why not, Chuck, let's go back to top threes, but do them as a Patreon exclusive, which means we can widen them out to non-slasher, but some slasher, but horror movie ones as well. So we will be returning the top threes to the people who support the show through a Patreon donation, and also obviously get an extra non-slasher horror related Patreon pick as well a month. And we've got Queen Kong coming up, and obviously we're recording this a bit in advance, so I'm not sure how it's going to work out, But you will appreciate the horror that is Queen Kong. So that'll be coming up, and the top threes will be coming back from the dead on the Patreon feed. So if you haven't already, please do sign up for $1 or $2 a month, and we love you long time. So, what?
We love you long time.
Indeed.
Just a bit bold.
Pardon?
Just sounds a bit bold.
Okay, well, we do love them long time.
Justin is a Vietnamese whore.
Well, yeah.
Well, it also means that there are other Patreon perks we can't go into on air. So anyway, here's Eric's joke of the week.
It's my joke of the week. It's so freaking fantastic.
So, did you know that apparently the best way to kill the killer in Unmasked Part 25 is to sing Billie Jean? Because it just might kill Jackson. Might kill Jackson. Thank you very much.
I liked it, Eric.
Thank you, Joseph. I love you.
I liked that one.
That was one of your betters.
I thought it was all right after you explained it. Otherwise, I wouldn't have got it.
And Justin, you want to tell me how wonderful you thought it was?
Well, I thought it was approaching a joke. So you did very well. I think that was one of your better ones, Eric.
Thank you.
Actually, I was the other day, I was just laying on my couch, and I actually came up with a joke that's very funny. It has nothing to do with Unmasked, but I thought it was very clever. Do you guys want to hear it?
Yes.
What do you call... Yay, I got the first one honk. I love that. What do you call a creature from a Scottish lake who won't stop knocking on your door?
Knock less monster.
Yes, that's it, Eric.
Oh,
yeah.
You need to sit on your couch less, Joseph.
Hey, I love my couch.
Well, yes. Well, I think it's... I
post hilarious jokes every day.
Yeah, your relationship one, I thought that was so awful, I actually laughed out loud.
Tell us the relationship joke now. I missed that one.
It's what do you call two chips that are in love? A relationship.
Oh, yes, I did see that one, actually.
This is what you're paying for, by the way.
Indeed, yes. Yes. So, what are we covering next time on Hysteria Continues?
It's Nathan's pick.
We are going to cover a driller killer, and this bit's for you in the Slumber Party Massacre Part 3.
Oh, yes. So Slumber Party Massacre Part 3 coming up next time on the Hysteria Continues. Is there anything else we would like to say to the good people before we say goodbye on this very short episode?
It is a short episode, isn't it?
That's all I want to say.
What were you going to say, Joseph?
What was that, Eric?
I'm just going to say this one more time.
You selfish relative!
No, I was going to ask Nathan. Are you okay with getting the audio?
I should be able to, yes, but I will let you know if I have any issues with it.
Usually the conversation we have after we've gone off.
Yes.
Yeah.
Joseph,
well, I'm trying to make this episode as long as possible because it's already short. So
okay.
How about
people are really wanting to hear this kind of stuff?
Want me to sing?
They do.
Well, how about we'll recite the alphabet in Spanish.
Uno, dos, tres, cuarto.
Can you do the alphabet backwards?
That's numbers. Well, let's save that for after the show. More of the scintillating conversations we have off air. So, what are we playing out with, Joseph?
This is actually... I was going to play out with that Stereo MC song, but I played that in the opening intro. So this is Nights on Broadway by the Bee Gees, and I liken it to this film. If you read the lyrics, it kind of reminds me of this film. So Nights on Broadway by the Bee Gees.
Well, there you go. Okay. Well, thank you for listening to Hysteria Continues, and we look forward to you joining us next time for Slumber Party Massacre Part 3. So say goodbye to the good people.
Bye, y'all.
See you on 26, Unmasked.